Greetings! Welcome to the devlog for Alpha 2 of Update 94 of Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. Oops, looks like I had my bullet trails on. Let's go ahead and turn those off. I always forget. Boop, right there in firearm options. Over there you go. So, what do we have for you folks this week? Well, mostly it's the stuff that I showed you I was working on last week, i.e. all of our ballistics and scope modifications. A lot of it needed some final polishing work, but along the way I got the first half of what I need to also change about our various reflexes and red dot sights finished. And decided to add a few more. So before we take a look at the new ones, I'm going to show you what I improved about our sort of standard set. I know when I made the last set of changes to these, a number of you were like, they're not bright enough in a particular way, they're too reddish, there's not enough white, the bloom is too much, etc. So I've been trying to tune those, honestly, just looking at more reference, both online and in real life. I actually bought a couple optics just to compare things to make sure that I got everything right. And in the process, actually ended up rescaling and tweaking a bunch of the sort of existing red dots. So in the case of, say, our MRO here, let's take a look at it. You'll notice that it's now a slightly smaller and tighter dot than it used to be, or rather it doesn't quite look like before I started tweaking with these, but looks a little more piercing. It still might be just a little too pinkish. I'm still playing with it. Note, right now I have the luminance changing disabled for all of these because I have to rewrite that system again. And I want to make sure that it's in a more sort of centralized, sort of profile-based system so that I can iterate and tweak these, because I know folks are going to make me keep tweaking them until they're perfect. So yeah. I was not expecting that to be quite that loud. Wonderful. And so that you can see, here is what our hollow sight looks like now. Once again, I've tried to get the dots about appropriate relative to each other, improve visibility, so this is closer to how it was before, while still having some improved visibility over really, really bright surfaces. Wonderful. So let's take a look at our new ones we've added, a couple at a time. Oh, that was hilarious. Grab those over there and grab these. Wonderful. So let's see here. We've got a couple new sort of really small ones. Feels a little silly, honestly, on a rifle this big. This feels a little more appropriate for like a tight little SMG or something like that. This is our SRO2. Good stuff. Let's grab ourselves. Variety is the spice of life. Let's grab ourselves something else. Maybe an Evo 3. Sounds great. Whack. Whack. Let's see, what else do we have? We've got, this is the Arco, I think. This, my irons might actually blow. Oh, nope, the irons don't quite block it. And of course we can co-witness if we need to. Convenient. We're just going to ignore that first shot. Wonderful. We've got, this is, I named this the Juliet 3, because I like dumb puns. And this one is high enough up that we don't block our irons. Super handy if you want to, say, zero that out to something like 100 while still using your irons for stuff up close. Not gonna hit anywhere near where I should. Whoops! Don't want you. Pull that off. Let's see what else. This is the EG1. Nice. I know a number of you were like, I want more like boxy, sort of rectangular format options. And this one has a more of like a circle type. again, probably a little too pinkish. I should make that sort of center band in it a little bit more white, less pink. But as I said, I'm still iterating on their visibility. It's surprisingly difficult to tweak because they end up feeling very different in different environments, because that's how light works. And then we got an LCO here, which honestly I love, especially if we sort of pull it way back. I love this one. Just real easy to pull up. I imagine that one will end up being quite popular and taking hold. And I've got only have right now one new magnified scope for you folks this week. I haven't gotten to the LPVOs yet. This is our BR4 fixed magnification. Honestly, I love the reticle on that. Looks so cool. Wonderful. Good stuff. So there you have it. As I said, bit of a short one this week. That's all the new stuff, mainly because I need y'all to check all of the ballistics changes. Let's jump out of VR now, and I'm going to talk to you about, those of you especially to try out new stuff, what you should be trying to keep an eye out for with all of the changes I've made. Yo! So, as I said, the stuff that I showed you folks last week is in this alpha. And to re-summarize that for anyone who didn't see that or just wants the TLDR version of it, is that there is now mechanical accuracy for all of the realistic firearms, meaning that precision weapons are going to have almost no variation, assuming like the weapon was perfectly fixed. Whereas older or cheaper or just weapons that aren't necessarily built to the same tolerances for totally understandable reasons will have wider sort of base projectile spreads, and I made those spreads a little more correctly statistically distributed versus how it was before this change. In addition to that, barrel length now matters in terms of the total, essentially the initial velocity of each projectile. And this is based on the best real-world data I was able to collate. It's clamped to within a range, so it's basically between 2-inch and 24-inch barrels. Beyond that, the values basically clamp. And so what you will basically notice is that anything with a longer barrel than a full-size handgun and a pistol cartridge will likely be a bit peppier, and anything that is more of a rifle round in a shorter platform like that AR SBR will be weaker. So basically I would just love it for those of you who already play a lot of it to just play a whole bunch of taking hold with the various sorts of weapons and cartridges, and you should probably notice a difference. For things like for the Wild West character, any rifle firing 45 long Colt should probably be a bit peppier. There are a number of weapons that should have just a slightly different sort of damage and balance feel, and honestly, I'm super curious to see how much that change is actually perceptible. Because the number one thing, anytime you're working on a really realistic simulation system, as the author, there's always this, it's enjoyable to just work on it. The complexity for its own sake, the sort of beauty of a perfectly assembled system. But the whole while you're working on it, there's always this little voice in the back of your head that's going like, is this gonna actually matter from like a gameplay standpoint? And oftentimes the answer is absolutely not. So many of us who do this sort of simulation work do it largely for the love of it, and a little bit the sort of like ego of like, oh yeah, well, does your game take into account air drag correctly? So oftentimes you just have to do it in a sort of comparative sense and put it into practice and see if it's perceptible by people and whether it actually alters things in a meaningful way. So I am, of course, curious to hear from you folks as to whether that mattered or not. It sort of had to be done in a way anyway because of the changes that I made to the scopes and the fact that they now auto-zero correctly. By the way, one little glitch at the moment. I'm not if you're hot swapping optics between two platforms with radically different parameters, just in case, you should probably, after affixing to the new platform, grab it and then re-zero its distance. Like even if you're just flickering it up to 200 down to 100, I'm not quite sure if it immediately wipes its prior data just on being attached. So just in case, so anyone who's testing this doesn't get confused, just sort of flush the data by changing the distance on the optic after attaching it. But yeah, let me know if I broke anything. I probably broke some things, but let me know what broke and what seems to be working for you folks here. And one last thing, because I get questions about this, especially after folks, anytime I do something involving scopes, I invariably get questions from folks who are like, I'm freestanding and holding my two controllers like this and trying to fire at 12x magnification sort of thing, and the scope's moving around a lot. The thing is, that's what firing at 12x magnification freestanding is like. To someone who isn't even practiced, just freestanding and holding a rifle aloft and firing down a 3x scope, you're going to have probably more wander of your reticle than you or I do holding two controllers here, because these weigh nothing. And so, given that, understand that the game has several options in it to help you stabilize things. The virtual stock, the foregrip bracing, the bipods. But beyond that, if that isn't sufficient for you in terms of shooting, these are the best ways. Like, use a chair. Like, actually sit down, go prone on the ground, as long as your tracking system doesn't freak out when that happens. I oftentimes, if I'm doing a whole bunch of like, I don't want to lay on my stomach, but I want to do really stabilized shooting, I will actually sit in a chair and back another chair up to me to rest my arms up on. And of course, there are folks who grab things like the Pro Tube and other sorts of gun stocks, which are if that's what you do a lot of in H3, could be a worthy investment. So I just wanted to let you folks know that, because a lot of folks expect, like, oh, I should just be able to bring a high magnification rifle up to my shoulder and just be able to perfectly keep it over a target like a mouse cursor, and that's just not how things work in reality. And any sort of filtering that would be added that would super stabilize that would fight your ability to make micro adjustments by the nature of the way filtering schemas work. So I hope that's helpful, and for those of you who just don't know how magnified shooting works, I hope that was useful information. So anywho, that's about it for this week. I'm still mostly working on game planner stuff. It's not exciting, so I'm not really bothering to show you folks. It's like I did even more like database, data structure design for the SOSIG spawners. I had to like go through and be like, okay, what are all the different types of SOSIGs that I didn't make super consistent profiles for, because they don't show up in take and hold, and then making all those profiles and naming them and putting them in groups, then building a set of dictionaries that can look them up based on a token, and then it's boring and terrible. But it needs to be done, because the end product is having a SOSIG spawner where you can, like that little control panel in the Proving Grounds, be able to just spawn any type of SOSIG in the game that you want, ready to fight. Which the one in the Proving Grounds actually has to be configured manually. The one in Game Planner will just, as I add new SOSIGs, it'll get automatically updated to have them in the same way that the item spawner and take and hold sort of automatically gets new guns. So yeah. Anywho, that's about it. I'm just rambling at this point. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.